Lorathi had studied humans for 4 standard cycles before she ever met one in person. She knew their average height, their muscle density, their unpredictable sleep habits, and their strange obsession with personal objects that held no functional value. She had memorized their social rules, their emotional cues, and their warning signs. Humans were loud, fragile, and impulsive. That was what the data said. The data did not prepare her for Captain Elia's ward. Her assignment was simple. She was to serve as a domestic aide for a human officer stationed at the outer edge of conquered space. The post was considered dull, low risk, and ideal for observation. A single human, no family, no local allies, minimal danger, minimal interaction. Lorathi welcomed the simplicity. Her species valued calm purpose. Emotion was treated as background noise, something to be managed and filtered out. Desire, especially, was considered a flaw, an imbalance that distracted from efficiency. She arrived at the human residence exactly on time. The door opened before she could signal again. Elia's ward stood there barefoot, wearing simple clothing that showed signs of wear rather than status. He looked surprised, then slightly embarrassed, then smiled in a way that made the corners of his eyes crease. "Oh, you must be Lorathi," he said. "Right on time, come in." He stepped aside without hesitation, without checking her credentials again, without the careful distance most species kept with unfamiliar beings. Lorathi paused for a fraction of a second, recalibrating. Humans were not supposed to invite strangers inside so easily. "Thank you, Captain Ward," she said. "I am your assigned domestic attendant." He nodded, then frowned lightly. "You can call me Elias. Captain makes this feel like work." She recorded that response internally. Humans preferred reduced hierarchy in personal spaces. The residence was clean but imperfect. Objects were placed for comfort, not symmetry. A chair had been repaired instead of replaced. A cup sat on a surface it did not belong on, as if forgotten. Lorathi noted all of it automatically. "I'll show you around," Elias said. "You don't have to start right away, you just arrived." "That is unnecessary," Lorathi replied. "I am functional," he laughed softly. "Yeah, I figured, still you don't have to rush." The statement confused her. Time was a resource. Why delay productivity? She followed him through the space, observing how he spoke without filling silence, how he waited when she paused to examine something, how he did not stare even when curiosity was clear on his face. Her species used observation as a tool. Humans seemed to use it as a form of respect. Her first days followed a predictable pattern. She cleaned, organized, prepared meals according to his nutritional preferences. Elias thanked her every time, even when the task was minor. He never raised his voice. He never gave orders without explanation. When she asked questions, he answered fully instead of dismissing her. The first disruption came during the 3rd cycle. Lorathi was recalibrating a faulty heating panel when a power fluctuation caused a sudden noise. Her species had a strong reflex response to sharp sounds. Her body stiffened, and for a brief moment her control slipped. Elias reacted before she could recover. He moved closer, not aggressively, not quickly, but with concern written clearly across his face. "Hey. You okay?" he asked. He did not touch her. He did not demand explanation. He simply waited. "I am undamaged," Lorathi said. "Still," he replied. "That was loud. Anyone would jump." Anyone would jump. The words stayed with her long after he left the room. Later that cycle, she replayed the interaction. Humans normalized reactions her species considered weaknesses. They did not punish them. They acknowledged them. That was unsettling. Over time, she began to notice small things. Elias spoke to inanimate objects when frustrated. He paused during meals to stare into nothing, lost in thought. Sometimes he seemed tired in a way that sleep did not fix. Once she brought him a drink without being asked. He looked genuinely surprised. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "I observed that your hydration levels were low," she replied. "Still," he said again, smiling. "Thanks." That word appeared often. Thanks. Gratitude expressed without obligation. Her internal balance shifted in ways she did not report. The Conquered required weekly behavioral logs. Lorathi's reports remained accurate but incomplete. She recorded tasks completed, hours worked, environmental conditions. She did not record the strange warmth that appeared in her chest cavity when Elias smiled at her. She did not record how she began to anticipate his presence in a room, adjusting her posture without conscious command. She did not record the night she found him sitting on the floor, back against the wall, staring at an old data slate. He noticed her immediately. "Sorry. Didn't mean to worry you. You are occupying an unusual position," she said. "Couldn't sleep," he replied. "Mind if I stay here a bit?" She did not understand the question. "This is your residence." "I meant with you here." Her processing lagged. "I do not object," she said carefully. He nodded and went quiet again. Minutes passed. She remained standing, uncertain. After a while, he glanced up. "You can sit if you want. You don't have to stand on duty all the time." She hesitated, then sat at a respectful distance. The floor was cool. The silence was not uncomfortable. It felt shared. After a long time, Elias spoke again. "You ever miss home?" "My assignment duration is limited," she replied. "That's not what I asked." She considered the question more deeply than necessary. "I do not experience absence in the same way humans do." He accepted that answer without argument. "Fair enough." Another pause. "Still," he added, "if you ever do, you can talk to me." The offer made no logical sense. He was not trained for emotional support. He gained nothing from offering it, yet he offered it anyway. That night, Lorathi failed to enter rest mode on schedule. Her species believed intimacy was dangerous because it created dependency. Humans seemed to believe intimacy was valuable because it created connection. The difference was subtle but profound. Days turned into cycles. Lorathi adjusted her routines not for efficiency, but for comfort. She timed tasks to avoid interrupting Elias when he was focused. She learned his expressions, his silences, the way his voice changed when he was stressed. She began to care. The realization struck her during a routine maintenance check. The word echoed in her mind, heavy and undeniable. Care was not supposed to happen. She did not report it. Instead, she observed it, carefully, quietly. Like everything else humans did, it was illogical, inefficient, and strangely powerful. And for the first time in her life, Lorathi wondered what might happen if she allowed herself to feel more. Lorathi began to notice patterns in Elias that did not match the official files. The files described humans as restless, ambitious, always pushing, always hungry for more territory, more resources, more control. But Elias did not behave like that inside his own home. He moved like someone who carried weight that could not be measured in cargo or credits. He woke early, not because of strict discipline, but because sleep often let him down. Sometimes he stared at the small window that looked out toward the station's inner ring, as if he was watching something that would never arrive. Lorathi had learned to keep the space quiet in the mornings. She made a warm drink the way he liked it and placed it near his chair without interrupting him. At first, she did it because it made the morning more efficient. If he started calm, his work would go smoothly and the household would remain stable. Later, she did it because she wanted to. She did not understand that wanting, not fully. Her species had words for need, for duty, for logic, for impulse control. Wanting was not a respected category. Wanting led to imbalance. Wanting led to mistakes. Yet she found herself planning for it in small ways. She began setting a cup where he would see it first. She began leaving small, fresh cloths folded with sharper edges, because Elias liked when things looked neat. She began to learn which station messages upset him, not by reading them, but by the way his shoulders moved after he checked his terminal. Each time she noticed, she felt a small internal shift. It was like a new sense forming, one that her training had not included. One afternoon, she heard a sharp sound from the front corridor. It was not an alarm, but it carried the tone of conflict. Voices followed. Elias was not home yet. Lorathi moved toward the door with careful steps, her posture straight, her expression neutral. The door display showed a visitor authorization request with a Concord seal. That alone made her uneasy. Concord officials rarely visited personal residences for simple greetings. She opened the door to a tall Tenvori observer in a formal uniform. His skin had the dull shine of his species, and his eyes held a controlled impatience. Behind him stood two aides holding scanning tablets. "Domestic Attendant Lorathi," he said, using her full classification title. "We are conducting a routine welfare inspection of exchange personnel." Routine. Another word humans used differently. Another word the Concord used to hide intent. "I was not notified," Lorathi replied. The observer's mouth moved slightly, not quite a smile. "Notification is not required for routine welfare inspections." His gaze shifted past her shoulder into the residence as if the interior was already his. Lorathi did not move aside. There is no emergency, she said. You may submit your request through standard channels. The observer's eyes narrowed a fraction. You are an exchange personnel, not a household authority. Step aside. Laratha's mind moved quickly. She could refuse, but refusal might be recorded as noncompliance. Noncompliance might result in reassignment. Reassignment would end her work here. The thought landed in her mind with a sharp, unpleasant sting. She did not like that feeling. She took a slow breath. Captain Ward is not present. Then your compliance becomes more important, the observer said. We will enter. Larathi stepped to the side with controlled reluctance. Her body remained near the doorway, her attention tracking every movement. The observer walked through the residence with the cold efficiency of a scanner. His aides checked surfaces, recorded temperature levels, measured air quality. Their tablets hummed softly, searching for signs of stress, contamination, misconduct. They asked questions that were too precise. How many hours does the human sleep per cycle? What is his recent emotional baseline? How often does he engage in physical contact with you? Laratha's internal systems tightened. He does not engage in physical contact. The observer paused. Not even incidental. No, she said. The observer's gaze flicked over her posture, her hands, her face, as if he expected to find evidence of a secret in the way she held herself. Have you experienced behavioral drift? He asked. Behavioral drift meant the slow shift of habits and thoughts under foreign cultural influence. It was treated as an illness. Many exchange workers returned home with minor drift, new speech patterns, unexpected preferences, small emotional changes, usually harmless. But the conquered watched for deeper drift. Drift could become loyalty. Loyalty could become defection. I am operational, Larathi replied. That is not an answer. She held still, letting silence do what words could not. The observer moved on, but his interest did not fade. When he reached the small corner where Elias kept personal objects, he stopped. There were photos printed on human material, a scratched metal tag, a small carved piece of wood shaped like an animal. None of them had value by conquered standards. All of them had meaning. The observer picked up the wooden carving, a crude object. It is his, Larathi said, voice flat. The observer set it down with minimal care. It would be wise for you to remember your purpose here. You are not here to bond, you are here to observe. I am aware, she replied. He looked at her again, more sharply this time. Then you will file additional personal logs, daily. Emotional markers, thoughts, disturbances. If you notice any unusual attachment responses, you will report them immediately. Larathi kept her face calm. Inside, something recoiled. Yes, she said. The observer nodded as if her agreement was expected. Good, and remember, humans are influential. They are not subtle. Exposure creates weakness in disciplined minds. He turned to leave. At the doorway, he paused. If the human requests improper conduct, you will refuse. If you feel temptation, you will request extraction. Understood? Larathi felt her throat tighten. Temptation. That word was not supposed to be used in official inspection language. Understood, she said. The observer left. The door closed. The residence became quiet again. Larathi stood still for several long seconds. Her senses searched for threats that were no longer there. Then her mind did something unfamiliar. It replayed the conversation not for accuracy, but for emotional impact. She had felt defensive. That was strange. She moved to the corner where the wooden carving rested and adjusted it to the exact position it had been before the observer touched it. Her fingers lingered near it longer than necessary. The door chime sounded again later. Elias returned, his footsteps heavier than usual. He looked tired, his expression pulled tight. He noticed her posture immediately. Something happened? A conquered welfare inspection occurred, Larathi said. Elias stopped. A welfare inspection here? Yes, he exhaled slowly, his jaw tightened. They didn't tell me. They stated notification was unnecessary. Elias gave a humorless laugh. Yeah, that sounds like them. He set down his bag and walked farther inside, scanning the room with his eyes as if he could see what had been taken just by looking. Did they mess with anything? He asked. They examined objects and asked questions, Larathi replied. They requested additional personal logs. Elias' eyes narrowed. About you. About my condition and behavioral drift. He stayed quiet for a moment. Then in a voice that was controlled but not calm, he said, That's not welfare, that's control. Her sensors registered heat changes in his skin, tension in his hands. He was angry, but he was holding it back. Humans did that sometimes, contained storms behind a steady face. I apologize if the inspection caused disruption, she said automatically. Elias looked at her. Hey, no, don't apologize, you didn't invite them. His tone was firm but not harsh. It was protective. She did not know what to do with that. He walked toward the kitchen area, poured water, then stopped as if he forgot why he was there. He leaned on the counter and stared at the floor. They do this, he said quietly. They push and they watch and they wait for you to slip. And then they act like it was for your own good. Lorathi held still. Her internal system suggested she should return to tasks, remove herself from an emotionally charged conversation. But her new sense, care, pushed her closer instead. Is it common? She asked. Elias lifted his eyes slightly. For humans in conquered space? Yeah, especially ones who don't play the game the way they want. He rubbed the back of his neck. I'm sorry you got caught in it. She realized something then. Elias saw her as part of the same pressure he faced, not as an outsider that belonged to the conquered. He placed her beside him in the problem. That was another subtle human choice, and it changed the shape of the room. It is acceptable, she said, but the words felt thin. Elias watched her carefully. It's not acceptable, but I appreciate you telling me. He hesitated, then added, did they say anything to you, like warn you about me? They stated humans are influential, Lorathi replied. Elias gave another humorless laugh. Influential, that's one way to say it. Silence stretched between them. Lorathi's mind considered the official requirements for additional logs. She was expected to report disturbances. She was expected to report attachment. She was expected to report temptation. Her attention slid to Elias' face. He looked tired and alone in a way that felt sharp. There was a disturbance in her system. She did not report it. That night, Elias did not leave immediately for rest. He stayed in the main room, working on documents and messages. Lorathi completed her tasks and stood at a respectful distance, unsure whether to withdraw. At some point, Elias' shoulders sank. He set his terminal down and pressed his fingers against his eyes. Long day? She asked. He looked up, surprised at the question, then he smiled weakly. Yeah, long day. The smile was tired but real. Her internal state shifted again. I can prepare a calming beverage, she said. Elias' expression softened. That would be great, actually. She moved to prepare it. When she returned, she placed the warm cup in front of him. He took it with both hands, breathing in the scent like it meant something more than chemicals. Thanks, he murmured. He did not drink right away. He just held it, warming his fingers. Lorathi watched him, and suddenly the thought arrived fully formed. Humans treated warmth as comfort. They created comfort deliberately. They shared it. I received a request from the observer, she said carefully. Elias looked up. What kind of request? They requested daily personal logs, emotional markers, disturbances. Elias' face tightened again. That's invasive. Yes. He stared at the cup for a moment, then said, You don't have to do that, not if you don't want to. Her mind froze. The request was issued by an authority. I know, Elias said, but authority doesn't always mean right. Those words were dangerous, not in the way of weapons or violence. Dangerous because they carried a kind of moral fire that could spread. Lorathi's species valued obedience. Humans valued judgment. That difference was why humans were feared and admired at the same time. They could break rules not for selfishness, but for principle. They could accept punishment if it meant protecting someone else. Lorathi felt something in her chest again, deeper than warmth now. It was not fear, it was not confusion, it was admiration. I will comply, she said, because that was what her assignment demanded. Elias nodded slowly, eyes still focused on her. Okay. Just be careful what you put in those logs. His voice lowered. They're not your friends. Lorathi stored that instruction carefully. She did not respond with reassurance. She did not know how. Instead, she asked a question that surprised even herself. Why do you remain in conquered space? Elias blinked. That's a big question. It has a simple answer, she said. He leaned back slightly, searching her face as if he was trying to decide how honest to be. I stay because someone has to, he said at last. Because if humans leave, then the conquered decides what humans are without humans around to correct them. And what do they decide? Lorathi asked. Elias' mouth tightened. They decide we're either a threat to control or a tool to use. They don't really believe we can be partners. Partners. That word echoed in her mind, not as a political term, but as something more personal. Elias took a sip of the drink, then sighed. The tension in his shoulders eased slightly. You know, he said, I was worried about getting a domestic aid. I thought it would feel weird, like having someone in my space who didn't want to be here. I am assigned, Lorathi said. Yeah, he replied, but you still show up, you still do the work, you still try. He looked at her carefully. I don't take that for granted. Loratha's senses sharpened. She felt the words like pressure against her skin, not physical but close. Her body wanted to step forward. Her training told her to stay back. She stayed. Later, after Elias went to rest, Lorathi sat at her console to write the daily report the Conquered demanded. The screen displayed the new format: emotional markers, attachment indicators, irregular impulses. Her hands hovered over the interface. She could write truth. Truth, the human made her feel seen. Truth, she had felt defensive when the observer insulted his personal objects. Truth, she had wanted to fix the carving not for order but for care. Truth, she admired him. She could also write something else. She wrote that her operational state remained stable. She wrote that environmental conditions were acceptable. She wrote that the human showed standard social behaviors. She wrote nothing about herself. It was a lie by omission. For the first time in her life, she felt the weight of choosing a lie. It was not exciting. It was not thrilling. It was heavy and frightening. And yet beneath that fear there was a small, quiet satisfaction. She had protected something. She did not fully understand why that mattered so much. The next cycle brought another subtle change. Elias returned home earlier than expected. His face was pale by human standards, his steps uneven. He held one arm close to his body. Lorathi reacted instantly, crossing the room with controlled speed. You are injured. Elias tried to smile. It failed. Just a scrape, nothing serious. Loratha's eyes scanned him. His forearm had a fresh cut, cleaned but still bleeding lightly under a temporary seal strip. His breathing was too fast. His skin was cool. You require medical attention, she said. I already went, he replied. Doc said it's fine. He sat down slowly, as if sitting cost him effort. Loratha's systems flagged his condition as stress, not injury. Something else had happened. What occurred? She asked. Elias leaned back and stared at the ceiling. Negotiations, he said, voice flat. Just negotiations. That was not an answer. Lorathi waited. Humans often filled silence when given space. Elias closed his eyes for a moment. They wanted me to sign off on a transport inspection policy. It would give the Conquered more control over human cargo routes. That is political, Lorathi said. Yeah, Elias replied, and they dressed it up like safety, like always. He opened his eyes again and looked at her, and for a moment his expression was very tired, very honest. I said no. Loratha's internal system registered a sudden spike in something she could not label. And they did not accept your refusal, she said. Elias' lips pressed together. Let's just say they don't like hearing no from humans. Loratha's hands curled slightly at her sides. She did not understand the human willingness to resist, but she saw the cost of it. The cost was written in his exhaustion, in the small cut, in the way he seemed to carry the entire station's pressure on his shoulders. You should rest, she said. Elias gave a small nod. Yeah. He stood again, then swayed slightly. Lorathi moved forward without thinking and lifted her hands, ready to steady him. She stopped herself at the last moment. The distance between them was small. Elias' eyes flicked to her hands. It's okay, he said quietly. You can. Her mind hesitated. Physical contact. The observer's warning echoed. If the Conquered learned she had touched him, would they label it improper? Would they call it temptation? Would they extract her? Elias waited, patient, not pushing. Lorathi realized something then that startled her. Elias was offering consent. He was allowing her to choose. Humans did that even with touch. Her hands moved forward. She steadied him by the arm, careful, gentle. His skin felt warmer than she expected. The contact sent a faint shock through her system, not painful but intense, like stepping into sunlight after a long time in shade. Elias exhaled slowly, relieved. Thanks, he whispered. The word had never sounded like this before. Lorathi helped him walk to the resting area. She did not hold him tightly. She did not treat him like fragile glass. She guided him with steady support, matching his pace. When he sat on the edge of the bed, he looked up at her with a kind of quiet trust that made her chest tighten. You're good at this, he said. I am trained, she replied, but her voice was softer than usual. Elias shook his head slightly. Not the training part, the being here part. He looked away, embarrassed by his own honesty. Humans sometimes did that after revealing something personal, as if they were afraid they had given too much. Lorathi stood still. Her fingers still held the memory of his arm. Her mind felt full and empty at the same time. "I will remain present," she said, because it was the closest she could come to saying what her internal state demanded. Elias smiled again, small and real. "I'd like that." He lay back slowly. Lorathi adjusted the room's lighting to lower intensity. She set a water container nearby. She checked his temperature and confirmed he was stable. Then she did something else. She sat in the chair beside the bed. She did not need to. She had tasks. She could have returned to the main room, but she stayed. Elias' breathing slowed. His eyes fluttered shut. His face relaxed in sleep. Lorathi watched him as the station's distant hum filled the quiet. In her species, watching someone rest was a duty reserved for guardians, for family units, for bonded pairs. It was considered intimate because it required time and attention without reward. Lorathi realized she was giving time without reward, and she did not feel loss. She felt purpose. Hours passed. When Elias finally woke, he blinked and found her still there. Confusion crossed his face, then something gentler. "You stayed," he said. "Yes," Lorathi replied. Elias swallowed, eyes suddenly wet in a way humans tried to hide. He cleared his throat and looked away. "People don't usually stay," he said quietly. Lorathi's mind recorded that sentence and felt a strange ache, as if it was a bruise forming inside her. "Then they were incorrect," she said. Elias let out a shaky breath that sounded like a laugh trying not to become something else. "You're something else, you know that." "I am Lorathi," she replied, simple. He looked at her again, and this time his gaze held something careful, like he was handling an object that could break. Not fear, not distrust, respect. "Yeah," he said softly. "You are." The moment stretched, quiet and full. Lorathi felt the urge to reach out again, not to steady him this time, not to perform a task, but to connect. The desire rose like heat in her chest, unfamiliar and strong. She did not act on it, but she did not deny it either. In the days that followed, she found herself remembering the feel of his arm beneath her hands. She tried to label the sensation for her logs. It was not simply touch. It had been permission. It had been trust. Her training had not prepared her for human intimacy because it had defined intimacy too narrowly. It had treated it as physical closeness, as bonding rituals, as reproductive behavior. Humans made intimacy out of small choices, out of staying, out of asking, out of letting someone support you without shame. That kind of intimacy did not demand. It invited, and that invitation was dangerous because it made her want to step closer again. She wrote another daily log, stable condition, no disturbances. But inside her, something had already changed. Not loudly, not dramatically. Quietly, like a seed taking root where it was never supposed to grow. And the more she tried to ignore it, the more she realized a simple truth. Humans were not influential because they forced anything. Humans were influential because they offered something most of the galaxy had forgotten how to give. Choice. And once someone experienced it, it was hard not to desire more. Lorathi's internal balance did not return to normal. If anything, it continued to shift in ways she could no longer ignore. The conquered logs required her to record disturbances, but disturbances implied disorder, malfunction, risk. What she felt did not match those definitions. It felt structured. It felt consistent. It felt like something growing with intention rather than breaking by accident. She began to understand why her species feared this state. It changed priorities. She still performed her tasks with precision. The residence remained clean, organized, functional. But now her awareness extended beyond surfaces and schedules. She noticed Elias' posture the moment he entered the room. She noticed the way his breathing changed when he read certain messages. She noticed when his humor felt forced instead of easy. Humans leaked emotion in small ways. Once she learned how to read them, she could not unsee it. Elias recovered physically within days. The cut healed, the bruising faded, but something in him remained tense like a string pulled too tight. He spent longer hours at the station. When he returned, his movements were controlled, his words measured. Lorathi recognized restraint. One evening, as she prepared the evening meal, Elias stood nearby without speaking. He watched her hands as she worked, his presence quiet but heavy. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked at last. He blinked, surprised. "What? No, why would you think that?" "You have been observing me," she said. Silently, he rubbed the back of his neck. "Sorry, I didn't mean to make it weird." "You did not," she replied. "But you are unsettled." Elias exhaled slowly. "Yeah," he leaned against the counter, eyes unfocused. The Concord called another meeting today. Lorathi paused her work. Regarding the transport policy and more, he said. They're restructuring human liaison roles. Centralizing authority. That implies reduced autonomy, she said. Exactly, Elias replied. They want humans visible but not influential, present but quiet. Lorathi processed that. You will resist. Elias looked at her sharply, then smiled faintly. You make it sound so obvious. You have not retreated thus far, she said. Your pattern indicates persistence. He laughed quietly. You're not wrong. The sound faded quickly. But resistance has a cost, and they're starting to apply pressure in more personal ways. Lorathi's internal systems tightened. Define personal. They're questioning my judgment, Elias said. My stability, my associations. The last word landed carefully, deliberately. Lorathi felt a flicker of alarm. I am an assigned exchange aide. My presence is sanctioned. For now, Elias replied, but they don't like variables they can't control. Silence settled between them. Lorathi resumed her task slowly, deliberately, as if movement itself required careful consideration. They questioned your logs, Elias added, her hands stilled. They asked why your reports are so empty, he continued. No emotional markers, no drift, no friction, just clean data. I have complied with reporting standards, she said. I know, Elias replied, but to them that's suspicious. Lorathi considered that. Truth was not enough if it did not fit expectation. They asked me if I thought you were being affected by prolonged human exposure, Elias said quietly. And what did you answer? Lorathi asked. Elias met her eyes. I said you were one of the most disciplined, capable individuals I've ever worked with. Her chest tightened again, that same deep pressure. I also said, he continued, that if they removed you, it would disrupt my household and my work efficiency. Lorathi processed that carefully. He had defended her using conquered logic, not emotional appeal. He had protected her in a language the conquered respected. I appreciate your intervention, she said. Elias shook his head. It wasn't intervention, it was truth. He hesitated, then added, but I need you to know something. She waited. They might escalate, he said. They might try to provoke a response from you, from me, from both of us. Lorathi's mind flashed to the observer's warning, temptation, improper conduct, extraction. What response do they seek? She asked. Elias' jaw tightened. Anything they can frame as instability, emotional attachment, dependence, especially across species lines. Lorathi understood then. The conquered did not fear intimacy itself. They feared loyalty that did not point upward. Then we must avoid triggering conditions, she said. Elias studied her face. That's the problem. They get to decide what counts as a trigger. The meal finished preparing itself without further input. Lorathi turned off the heat and set the food aside, her movements slower now. I will increase caution, she said. Elias nodded, but his expression remained troubled. I don't want you walking on eggshells in your own head. I am capable of managing internal states, she replied. I know, he said softly. I just don't want you punished for doing your job well. She did not correct him. She did not tell him that it was no longer just a job. That night, Lorathi dreamed. Her species did not dream often. Rest cycles were structured, regulated. Dreams were usually fragments, meaningless neural echoes. This dream was different. She stood in the residence, but it was larger, warmer. Light filled the space. Elias was there, not wounded, not tired, just present. He spoke, but she could not hear the words. She understood them anyway. When she woke, her systems flagged the experience as abnormal. She did not record it. The next inspection came without warning. This time it was not just one observer. 3 conquered officials arrived, their uniforms formal, their expressions carefully neutral. Lorathi opened the door before they could request entry. Elias was home this time. He stepped beside her, his presence steady, deliberate. This is my residence, he said. State your purpose. Routine follow-up, the lead official replied. We require updated assessments. You already have them, Elias said. We require confirmation, the official said. Lorathi sensed the tension rising like static in the air. She stood straight, her posture calm, her expression neutral. Enter, Elias said after a moment, but make it quick. The officials moved through the residence again, slower this time, more deliberate. They watched interactions, tracked eye movements, noted distance and posture. One of them spoke directly to Lorathi. Have you experienced any recent emotional fluctuations? No, she replied. Have you experienced desire to alter assignment parameters? Another asked. No, she said. Have you experienced attachment to the human beyond functional necessity? The lead official asked. Lorathi felt Elia's shift beside her, not toward her, not away, just enough to be present. No, she said again. The official studied her carefully. Your answers are consistent. Too consistent. Lorathi did not respond. The official turned to Elias. And you, have you noticed changes in her behavior? Elias did not hesitate. Only increased efficiency. That is unlikely, the official said. Then perhaps your expectations are flawed, Elias replied evenly. The official's eyes narrowed. Captain Ward, your history suggests a pattern of defiance. Elias' mouth tightened. My history suggests a pattern of judgment. The room grew quiet. The officials exchanged subtle signals. The lead official stepped closer to Lorathi. We are concerned, he said, that prolonged exposure to human emotional frameworks may be affecting your cognitive alignment. I remain aligned, Lorathi replied. Then demonstrate, he said. The command was abrupt, sharp. Demonstrate what? She asked. Distance, he said. Step away from the human. Lorathi's mind froze for a fraction of a second. The request was small, logical, measurable. Step away. Her body did not move. She realized something terrifying in that moment. Her hesitation was visible. Elias spoke before the official could. She doesn't need to prove anything. The official turned to him. This is not your decision. No, Elias said, but this is my home. The official's gaze hardened. Your home exists under conquered jurisdiction. Then your jurisdiction has limits, Elias replied. You don't get to stage loyalty tests in my living room. The air felt heavy. Lorathi's systems screamed warnings, conflict escalation. Risk of extraction, risk of reassignment, risk to Elias. She made a choice. She stepped away. The movement was smooth, controlled, precise. She increased the distance between herself and Elias by a single measured pace. There, she said, distance demonstrated. The official watched her carefully. Very good. Elias did not look at her. His eyes were fixed on the officials, his jaw tight. Are we finished? He asked. For now, the official said. But understand this, influence is not always visible. Sometimes it hides behind discipline. He turned to leave. The others followed. The door closed. The silence afterward was heavy, fragile. Lorathi remained where she was, her internal state vibrating with unresolved tension. She had complied. She had protected Elias. She had also felt something fracture quietly inside her. Elias finally turned to face her. I'm sorry, he said immediately. You did not issue the command, she replied. I still hate that you had to do that, he said, that they put you in that position. It was a simple action, she said. He shook his head. No, it was. He took a step toward her, then stopped himself as if remembering invisible lines. They're trying to isolate, he said quietly. Make us doubt each other, make us careful. They succeeded partially, Lorathi said. Elias winced. Yeah. Silence stretched again. The space between them felt wider now, charged with things unsaid. I will increase compliance, Lorathi said. I will reduce proximity. Elias looked at her sharply. No. That would reduce risk, she said. It would reduce us, he replied. The word us hung in the air, dangerous and real. You don't have to protect me by disappearing, Elias said. That's what they want. Her mind struggled to reconcile competing priorities, safety, duty. Integrity, care. What do humans do when all options carry risk? She asked. Elias gave a small, sad smile. We choose the one we can live with. That night, Lorathi sat alone longer than usual. She replayed the moment she stepped away, the way her body had resisted the command, the way compliance had felt like loss. She opened the conquered log interface and stared at the empty emotional markers. She typed a single line. Minor cognitive strain due to inspection pressure. No impact on operational capacity. It was technically true. It was also deeply incomplete. The next days were quieter. Elias respected the increased distance she imposed, though it clearly cost him something. He spoke less. He smiled less. The residents felt colder despite stable temperature. Lorathi hated that she had caused it. One evening she found Elias sitting by the window again, staring out at the station lights. The posture was familiar now. Lonely, guarded. You are avoiding rest, she said. He sighed. Yeah, she stood nearby, uncertain. You may speak, she added. Elias hesitated. I don't want to put you in a bad spot. You already are, she said gently. Avoiding reality will not change that. He smiled faintly at her phrasing. You learn fast, he took a breath. They offered me a compromise. Lorathi turned fully toward him. Define compromise. They want me to accept a reassignment, less visibility, less influence. In exchange, they'll close the inquiry into my household. Understanding settled heavy and cold. They will remove me. They didn't say it outright, Elias said, but that's the implication. Lorathi felt a sharp, sudden clarity. The choice was no longer abstract, it was immediate. What will you do? She asked. Elias looked at her. I wanted to ask you the same thing. She processed the question slowly. If he accepted, she would be reassigned. Safe, stable, empty. If he refused, pressure would increase, risk would escalate, consequences would follow. Humans chose paths they could live with. Lorathi realized she had one too. I do not wish to be reassigned, she said. Elias' eyes widened slightly. Lorathi, I am aware of the implications, she continued. I am aware that this statement indicates attachment. He stood slowly. You don't owe me that. I am not offering debt, she said. I am stating preference. Preference, such a small word for such a large step. I choose to remain, she said, if allowed. Elias swallowed, his voice was rough. They won't like that. Neither do I, she replied, when others decide my position without consent. He studied her face, searching for doubt. He found none. Okay, he said finally, then we stand together. The phrase sent a deep, steady warmth through her chest, not sharp, not overwhelming, solid. That night when the Conquered received Elias' refusal, they responded exactly as predicted. Formal notices, warnings, scheduled hearings, pressure, but something else happened too. Word spread. Other species, exchange aides, began watching humans more closely. They noticed similar patterns: respect, choice, care without demand. The Conquered had underestimated something fundamental. Human intimacy was not weakness, it was alignment. And alignment, once chosen, was very hard to break. Lorathi stood at the window beside Elias as the station lights pulsed beyond the glass. She did not stand too close. She did not step away. She stood exactly where she chose to stand, and for the first time the choice felt entirely her own.